Hello and welcome to the Brains podcast. Today I am joined by MacPherson Le Maire. We'll be exploring a different perspective on longevity, moving beyond optimism into the role relationships, environment, and social circles play in shaping how we all live. Welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be back. Great to see you.
Yes, so let's dive into this first question about longevity. When people talk about longevity, the conversation usually does go straight to supplements, training routines, gyms, and etc. and all of the optimization tools, but you bring much more of a human lens, right? Why do you believe longevity is not just about how we live, but also why we share life with?
Well, I think longevity has turned into kind of a very much a buzzword, particularly in the industry, I guess, that I find myself in wellness, hospitality, travel, etc. And I think we really need to reframe what we mean by the word. And yes, there are a whole host of different things that you can do physically, technologies, gadgets, gizmos, nutrition, and all of those things, I guess, in part have a role to play. But I think longevity really, and that's really where I think everybody's coalescing around, is really much more about your health span and the quality of the years that you live, not necessarily the amount of years that you're going to live. And part of having good longevity is definitely coming back to purpose and coming back to your how to optimize your social interactions, relationships, and the personal elements of your life as well.
And if you look at the world's longest living populations, there's clearly more than just diet and exercise. For example, community, belonging, there's family and social connection all seem to really play a huge role in this. What do you think that teaches us about what a truly long and meaningful life really looks like?
Well, you just said it. I think that the key thing here is to look at who are you surrounded by, on a daily basis, and that's both from a professional standpoint and from a personal standpoint. Who enriches you, who, the strong. I've always believed that in life you've got radiators and you've got drains, and I think the key element here is both professionally and personally. It's about removing anything or anyone that drains you in life, whether that's in your professional circle, your personal circle, and really look for people that are giving you that reciprocal energy, and people that you can learn and grow with. And I think that's probably why looking at those societies, looking at those countries, that they do have such a good health span overall translated to lifespan. Yes, of course, there are things that you can do to enhance your longevity, which I'm sure we're going to speak about, but ultimately your purpose and how you feel in terms of your social relate and your relationships are two very important factors.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things that you said, it's not just about physical, it's not about supplements, it's about like the relationships that you have and the people you're surrounding yourself with. How much do the people around us really shape our health and our energy, stress levels, and long-term well-being? Like, is this a number that would surprise people when they find out?
It would shock people, frankly. I mean, let's take first of all the professional setting, right? And a great line I always like to use, because we spend a lot of time in work or whatever our career happens to be, and if you look at your work environment, your professional environment, people never leave bad jobs; they leave bad managers or bad leaders. So it really does spike cortisol when you're in a sustained, stressful flight or fight situation in your professional life. If you do not feel like you're within a circle of safety, and that can apply to professional and personal, but here we're talking professional for the moment. If you don't feel that circle of safety in your professional environment, you are constantly looking for threats. You are constantly looking at this fight or flight response. The longer you're in that response, the more cortisol you have in your system. And it's really undeniable now, the amount of evidence to suggest the harm that permanent levels of cortisol do in the human body, both physically and mentally.
A lot of people really underestimate the biological effect of relationships. We think of stress as emotional, but it shows up physically in sleep, in recovery, in inflammation, in acne. It's there. Can you unpack that link between our social environment and what is happening inside the body during these moments?
Absolutely, and and just touching on it there, you mentioned sleep, you mentioned, and you can fool yourself with as many supplements and NAD as you want. If you're not sleeping properly, it means nothing. You really have to ensure that, because true longevity is going back to what? It's going back to pillars that we all know exist. Ensuring that you have the right sleeping patterns, ensuring that what you put into your body in terms of nutrition is, is the right thing and wholesome. Moving and more exercise. These are all very basic things, but they're actually things that people are negating and think they can short circuit or biohack. You can, to some degree, enhance what you're doing, but those things remain really prevalent. And I think, probably just to share, you also touched on burnout a minute ago. And honestly, I think probably, and this is not like to, you don't, it's not about finding fault with your professional life necessarily for the sake of it. But, I think personally, sharing that experience, I was running towards that at the, last year, which is why I made a big change in my life. And that's nobody's decision but your own. You decide at which pace you want to roll and what boundaries you put down. But coming from someone who I genuinely think was having a lot of those symptoms of burnout, it really made me want to readdress the people that are around you, your social setting, and how you treat your body.
And was your experience last year something that made you have more of an interest in this, or like, did you notice this, or did someone else notice that you were running towards that road? And how did you get out of it, or how did you put your foot on the brake?
At first I didn't, because I think when you're in it, when you're really high in it and you're passionate about what you do in your life and you're passionate about your career, you're passionate about the companies you work for, you don't always notice it. And it's not to say that the whoever you work for, or the companies that you work for are at fault necessarily. You decide, right? Like I said, it's up to you to make that choice. But I think, yeah, my friends and family definitely started to notice it. I'd be like up at all hours. Like, I would have this like crazy insomnia I would never turn off. I would always be on my phone. I wouldn't be in the moment. I wouldn't be committed to times outside of work. And so I think when you start noticing that it's affecting your health, it's affecting your social relationships, and that you are heading towards, well, I never feel fulfilled unless I'm doing something to do with, or, that kind of guilt factor. I think you've got to then look at how you make that change. And I don't think there's any shame in saying, yeah, do you know what? I was nearly at a burnout level, and it was time to make that change.
Yeah, there's no shame at all. It's very, I think, it's very respectable. I respect it a lot, and it's good that people listening or people watching can hear that as well. It's a good tip. Like, as you say, if you're not making time outside of work, etc., or just being consumed by it, like that's an early sort of alarm bell, almost, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Uh, so on the flip side, then, when there is trust, when there's calm, when there's a healthy balance, what does that look like then?
I think what that looks like is within yourself having the confidence to have boundaries about what you're it doesn't matter what you're doing in life, whether you work for yourself, whether you work for an employer. I think it's about, right, no, I'm not gonna accept that treatment of myself that's coming from me. I need to make a change about how I respect myself in terms of, ensuring that I get the right sleep, ensuring that I'm being respectful to my body by actually putting the right things into it most of the time anyway. And then looking at how I can really have a circle around me that encourages that, right? And also doing the right things to keep yourself healthy. And I think that is, if you're doing those things, then you're making massive inroads to having good longevity.
And how does all those things then positively impact your health long term?
Well, long term, if you're doing those things, if you're getting the right, again, it's basic stuff, but if you're getting the right amount of sleep, if you are, removing things from your life whether it's your personal life or whether it's your profession, if you're removing things from your life that cause you additional stress, that put you in that state of having a high amount of cortisol permanently in your system, if you're doing the right things, then you're what that does is reduce the amount of stress that you have. Everyone's going to have a little bit of stress, and that life is life, right? So everyone has that stress that they're going to have that's very, very normal. And sometimes having a cortisol in your system for a small amount of time, that whole, the adrenaline rush can also enhance performance, but it shouldn't be there semi-permanently.
No, it definitely shouldn't live there.
Right.
It should come to visit and help you
Yeah.
perform as you said, but it should not live there. But like when it comes to stress, I want to point out like what would you how do you eliminate stress? It sounds like such a simple, straightforward question, but maybe someone's listening like, oh, ask the question, but what would you say would be the first five things if someone feels like their cortisol is spiked or they're feeling stressed? What would you say five things to kind of
Well, look, I think for me, if I'm stressed and it's kind of spiked and I'm struggling to regulate it, I find that it is my circle of people that I trust and love and believe in that can help me reduce it. So I'm very much a person that draws energy from from my external environment and from my social interactions and my friendships and peerships, and I really do believe in mentors. I think mentors are really, really important. So I like to soundboard, when I'm stressed. I like to get input from other people so I can gather and then ground myself and then figure out a way after having spoke to a few people that I really trust and they know who they are. And then I'm able to kind of find a way forward based on that. But the best thing for me is to take yourself out of that immediate situation, then figure out a response.
right? So respond, not react kind of thing. And right? Or,
Yeah, don't react. I think it's important when you're in a situation not to react like straight away. It's quite hard to do. It's
mm.
easier said than done. But
Yeah.
I think reacting straight away to a situation really kind of feeds it and can, exacerbate the situation rather than taking more time out to consider how you're going to respond.
And finding your anchors that you can be grounded by and help you find clarity amongst
Right,
all
exactly.
the hecticness.
Yeah.
No, that's good advice. But we often hear that discipline is the key to health if you want to look good or something like that. But in reality, our environment tends to shape our behavior far more than really our intentions do. How much do you think I mean, you've just spoken about it. How much do you think our social circle influences our habits?
Hugely. I mean, and I think that's what you've got to be prepared to do throughout your life. You've got to be prepared to amend your circle if need be. And I think, and that's something I have done a lot over, I would say, the last 18 months. And I'm like, does that situation, does that person, does that environment is it bringing joy, is it bringing peace, is it recharging me, is it uplifting me? And if the answer to a few of those questions is no, then why are you keeping it around? And the other thing is, when you're, particularly when you're younger and you're growing and you want to evolve, check who's around you with that mindset, right? Because it you know misery and negativity always love company. So I think if you are surrounded by or you have some people maybe around you that are not kind of in a growth mindset, not people that are looking to necessarily better you and better themselves, very happy to stick with status quo or below that because it's just the easiest way and the least path of resistance, then I think that really does stunt and inhibit how you can learn and grow.
So it's really true that you become the like closest five people around you, or
Yeah, I think the closest five people around you analogy is important. Who are they? And they may be different, by the way, between your personal life and your professional life. It may well be that those people in your professional life are very different in terms of the people in your personal life, but think about who those people are. Think about how much access you grant people as well. And I think that's a lesson that I've definitely really learned in the last 18 months.
yeah, I like that the boundary setting, who gets access. This isn't Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory handing out golden tickets to everyone to access you. Do you know what I mean? And that's easier said than done, I believe,
Oh,
right?
Ray, he said the done because I'm a people pleaser. So I'm
Right? Like,
someone that, and I admit that is kind of one of my default
uh,
like vices that I've always had to
mm,
work on because I'm someone who, like my behavior, driver, if you like. I studied psychotherapy when I was younger, and in transactional analysis, they say that you have the "I'm only happy if," right? And my driver was like, "I'm only happy if I'm pleasing others." I scored that really highly, so I'm glad I did that exercise in my 20s because actually it has, even though that's still sometimes the case and it's a default driver, I am aware of it. So it's about then, okay, I always trust someone until you give me a reason not to trust you. But at that point, you've got to sometimes withdraw access to people, if they're not bringing you any positivity.
no, I agree. I wanted to ask you about the difference between, say, someone who is constantly trying to be happy, going to the gym, trying to work on themselves, and someone who maybe just has the right circle around them and is happy by default. How does that look, and what are the differences in that?
That's a really interesting question because, of course, I admire people who are committed to. We mentioned you were talking a little bit earlier about the power of habits, right? And habit is progress, not perfection. Okay, so if you're doing something regularly and you're regularly investing into that bank of whatever it is, let's say it's the gym and it's your physical health and yeah, but there is an element, of course, of some people that would be doing that because of maybe insecurity with the way they look. And I think it is also very powerful, in addition, to then have people around you that make you feel like a better version of yourself and more confident. And that can be just as powerful as, say, hitting the gym every day, definitely.
Why is that?
Well, when you're around people that you get joy from, that you love in a way, or that you like, or that you admire, all of the good hormones are released. We all want those. We all want the dopamine. We all want the the oxytocin. We all want the love hormones flowing. We all want so when those hormones are flooded, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine into the brain, we know that it not just spikes mood, but it actually makes us feel better. And again, by contrast, you're reducing the hormone that you don't want there so much, which is the cortisol, which we know long term has negative health impact. So that's why being surrounded by a strong circle that bring you, for the want of a better use of a word, joy is the way forward.
Is better than going to the gym, is what I'm hearing. So just have good
Well,
friends.
that's not to say don't go to. I mean, I try and go to the gym I'm trying
Tom,
now
that's
three
what I'm
times a week,
hearing.
but
I'm hearing that you told me I don't need to go to the gym and I just need to hang out with my friends and have a
yeah,
wee
my
Aperol
PT would
spritz.
not be endorsing this
Don't
message.
listen to that
Yeah,
part. But there's still, right now, even in 2026, there still seems to be this conversation as in mental and physical health is separate, and it definitely belongs in the same conversation. From your perspective, why is emotional well-being such a fundamental part of long-term health and this conversation around longevity?
well, because emotional well-being means you're balanced. It means you have it means that you are you're also taking charge of your EQ. You're taking charge of your emotional intelligence. It means that you're also taking power back from situations. If you are an emotionally well-regulated person, then you're less likely to react with anger to something. I mean, we all react, it's human, we all react with anger sometimes, but you're less likely to react on the cusp. You're more likely to be able to play a longer game on that, if you can regulate your emotions. And emotional well-being means that, as I said, you're not constantly in this position of having to think, do I need to flee? Do I need to fight? Do I need to? So, and that's why you don't want relationships where you have to second guess what your position is all the time with that person.
No, 100%. And I wanted to ask, with this digital age and how that can induce anxiety and stuff like that, would you recommend looking at how you're using other like devices or apps or anything as well to bring down
I
stress?
think
Or
everyone could do that, right? I mean, I think I grew up for I'm so happy that I grew up in an era where we didn't have smartphones and we didn't have, God, look at how old that shows me to be now.
I'm the
Hang
same.
on.
I'm the
But
same.
yeah, because we're a prisoner to them. Even people that didn't grow up with them, I find myself being a prisoner to. I look at my screen time sometimes, think, my God, how did I clock up so much screen time? Um, and I do think, yes, that social media and smartphone use has and screen time has definitely spiked issues, particularly amongst Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Um, but I also do think, controversially, that it has become almost fashionable among the younger generations to have a mental health problem because sometimes it is just life. Right. So, okay, there were things happening. There are things happening now that happen on social media that feel quite, we've seen the documentaries and we've seen the pieces on say online bullying. Well, bullying still existed 25 years ago. It was just in the school playground, maybe, rather than on a social app at home. So I do think that we have to also stop sending or diagnosing mental health conditions constantly as a source of a source of the problem. Um, our mental health is important, yes, but there is an element of well to life is life. You also do have to go through it, and not everything is going to be like rosy.
Now, because we're Brains Magazine, we're working with entrepreneurs, we're working with thought leaders, doctors, and coaches. I want to look at this from more of a business angle. So, because the people around us do not just affect our health, they also affect our performance, our decision making. Maybe you talked about like ambition earlier. If they're ambitious, they want to grow, then ultimately that can seep into you as well. How have you seen someone's relationships or environment impacted by the way they show up at a business or a career?
I think you see that within organizations where and I've experienced it with many companies years back actually, where I used to manage much larger teams 10, 15 years ago. And if they got into a mindset or a group of people where you have like a negative echo chamber, then you're not really going to do the right things for your own development or for your progression. And that can impact your own chances in your career and the opportunity to further advance. And that's why I think it's important to surround yourself with the right type of people, but to also be happy within your professional setting. Because I think if you're not, then you make a change. And I don't accept this kind of rule that used to very much I mean, I guess it's a bit more of an old school rule, but you don't have to stay somewhere just because it feels like too much hassle to change job, change profession, change career. Make a change if you're not happy doing what you're doing. I never understand people that stay doing something that clearly makes them miserable.
I've always thought that as well. You hear them complain, but why do you think that is? Is there a reason, like, from your perspective, why are people it's they're not comfortable where they are, but it's uncomfortable for them to
Well,
go
because
somewhere
most
else.
of the time I'm just going to say that it's professional laziness. It's people that do, that it seems like too much like hard work to actually do the work and make the change and think, what is it that I actually want to do that's going to that's going to fulfill me? Um, because anything that's worth having in life, a career, success, your own business, well, yeah, I'm afraid you're going to have to put the work in first. You're going to earn your stripes. You've got to put the hours in. And I do think that I see it a lot more, and I don't want to stereotype. However, you do see it a lot more now in Gen Z and Gen Alpha. You see a lot of entitlement in the workplace because they think, they come out of uni with a degree and they think that they're entitled to, go into a job straight away at 40, 45 grand a year. Well, that wasn't my reality. You have to earn the experience. You have to earn the expertise. You have to be taught and you have to find mentors. And to do all of that, you have to be driven. And I think if you accept average and you accept mediocrity, you fall into that trap of like, oh, you know what, it's too much like hard work. I'll just stay doing what I'm doing. It's the easiest thing. But then that is not a growth mindset.
It's not at all. And then you've got a workplace where you've got this, I almost see it as like a poison if someone's got that mentality and then they're surrounded by other people. Then you've got an office culture or a work culture that is, they're all surrounded by each other. That's being passed on, and it's how are you going to come back from that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's always been one of my mantras that I've had with my teams over the years. Don't just bring me the problem, bring me some possible solutions as well, right? Solution focused.
As people now become, and me included, I become more intentional about how I'm living. I mean, I'm 34, so I'm like, I'm going to go to the gym, so I'm mobile when I'm 60. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the direction we're going. Often, they realize not everyone around them is growing in the same direction, and that can be really tough. But why is that such an important but uncomfortable part of personal growth?
Well, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it can be really uncomfortable, but it can also sometimes just be a really big reality check. Um, and it's uncomfortable because sometimes those relationships you might think were going to be relationships that you were going to have for the duration or for a long period of time. And sometimes that's not the case. But there's no point, I think, keeping situations and people in your life that are, like I said, that are not contributing, because I think it should be a mutual exchange, right? It should be like friendship and professional peers and mentors. There's kind of an unwritten contract there that you should be contributing to each other's growth, I think. And if you're not doing that, then what is it that you're getting out of it?
For
Without
sure.
it sounding transactional.
No, no, no. I totally get it. It should be give and take, like pouring into each other's cup in that
Yeah.
sense. Curating a friendship group can sound a bit harsh, right? But I understand the sentiment for sure.
Oh no,
Um,
I love that whole piece about curating a friendship group because I really believe in that.
what does being more intentional about who you're spending your time with or filling the cup look like in a healthy and maybe really thoughtful, intentional way?
When you meet interesting people and you get that feeling like, oh my god, there's a feeling here, a connection, then follow it and make sure they're going to be in your life. I remember meeting someone in, and this was just an example that stood out, because it was kind of quite a powerful thing, that it was a physical thing that I think, well, what is that? And I met someone in the summer of 2020, so not a great time as well. So,
Look at you meeting
maybe I
people during
needed, I
that
know,
time.
look, I know in the brief interlude that we were allowed
Yeah.
out to play. And I remember meeting this person who is, a very good friend of a family member. And I can't really explain it. It was just like and it's not, it's a relationship that is kind of, I guess now you could define it as brotherly, but it was just a connection where I thought I need to see more of that person. Like when I'm around them, as a friend, I feel super, super recharged. So I made it my mission to seek out to be in that company. Probably a little bit weird and a bit stalkery, but actually that's what you need to do. And there are other people like that I've met that in my professional side of my life over the years where I'm like, wow, I need that person to stay around. Really want to be involved with that person. And in the hospitality industry that I've worked in with some time, there's a group of around 4 or 5 people that I will never let go. That's it. They're stuck with me now because I always feel fulfilled professionally when I'm around those people. So keep them, seek them, curate them, and then maintain that relationship. And you'll find that if you do that and you act on that, because relationships take maintenance.
This
It's not just your partnership or your husband or your wife, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that takes. Your friendships need maintenance. Your professional relationships need maintenance.
that's one of my 2026 bingo cards to water. Me and my boyfriend say we have to water our
You
friendships.
have to. It's really important. And it's not something that you take for granted. The people that I love the most in the world in my friendship groups, okay, it's slightly easier with a partner because normally you're with them more or less day in, day out, and you're continuing to work at that all the time. And without my partnership, I would be nowhere. So it means that it's a massive amount to me. Like that person has given me everything. But with your friendship groups, that takes a bit more work, but it's something you should do. And if you're not doing it, ask yourself why you're not calling those people, right? Why are you not like reaching out? Why are you not arranging times and making sure that you're gonna have more memories with those people? It's a question to ask yourself because friendships and professional relationships should be nurtured. And examples again in the professional world as well. my teams over the years in various companies, and like, oh well, we're not doing so much with that client right now. It's like, when was the last time you spoke to them? Just for a chat, check in, coffee, glass of wine, cocktail. You know,
100%. No, I love that you're very much on the same page. And I feel, again, back to me using this as my 2026 bingo card, I felt like catch up culture was really killing me. I was just saying, let's have a catch up. And I was
and then you never
hearing,
do.
if they did, I was just hearing what they did. I was hearing they went here, they went there. And I was like, no, but I think I want to be part of that plan. I want to go there and I'm going to go here with you. I don't want to just meet you and hear everything you've done. I want to be part of your plans as well.
So here's my rule
Mm.
with that catch up piece. What I do is when we start talking about, right, we need to catch up, we haven't seen each other in a little bit. Right, okay, I said, get your diary out. Whether it's digital or like me, old school, writing in my hand diary. Get your diary out. I'll do it now. When you next free? Let's get it in. Because how many of us do that? I would like to say it's quite a large percentage of people that say, oh, I haven't seen you in ages. We got to catch up sometime. Yeah, absolutely. Send me some dates. Tumbleweed. So what you've got to do is do it there and then. Set the intention and be like, right, no, when are you next free? What are we going to do? And let's not just do a half hour or coffee where you literally can just exchange what you've been doing in the last week. Let's put a night in, put an afternoon in, do it properly, commit to it.
Do it properly, commit to it. And I just love the idea of going back to being a teenager again. Come over, let's have a pizza, let's watch TV.
Yeah.
Wear your tracksuit
It
bottoms.
doesn't have to be a big plan. You don't have to set out to have, cocktails and glad rags in the West End. It can just literally be, I'm going to come and hang at yours for like a few hours.
We're gonna watch music videos and drag race with pizza. That's what I want to do.
Right.
Do you know
Okay.
what I
So
mean?
we know what your perfect night in is.
That's it. For somebody listening and that person being me as well, I find this topic so interesting and who wants to maybe build not just a longer life, but a better one with more impact and meaning. What are some of the first shifts that they can introduce when it comes to the relationships, their environment, and the people that they want beside them, their curated group long term?
Well, I think personally, first of all, it's good to know who you are, right? Um, and I've done a lot of work on that over the years with the studies that I used to do, and the fact that people are a passion of mine. So figure out who it is you are. You've got to know who you are, and you've got to know what makes you passionate and the type of people you want to spend time around. But I think also from a professional capacity, I think you have to find your purpose, right? You have to find what your duvet flip is. What gives you purpose every day? Why do you get out of bed? What makes you want to do the things that you do professionally, and what gives you fulfillment? And then from there on in, you really gravitate to those like-minded people. And then, like I said earlier, when you find interesting people that set off that little physical reaction, you're like, right, okay, yeah, great. This person is super interesting, exciting, connected. Then connect with them and curate it, make it happen, like engineer situations where you can spend time with those people. That's the best way to do it. It's not just going to all fall into your lap.
If you don't cut out the people who maybe aren't adding to you and maybe those drainers that you talked about in the beginning, hypothetically, what does that look like for someone? Like
Well,
we talked about.
if you don't cut out the people that you need to cut out, or a situation that you need to cut out, or a friendship you need to cut out, or a partnership you need to cut out, or a work situation you need to cut out, what happens is those new doors don't open. So you just find yourself lying in the mud, and instead of rising with the new flowers, you're strangled by the weeds. So, and I know it sounds a bit brutal, and it's not like you're going to do it all the time. I'm not saying that this is something you do every year. You start cutting people out of your life, but I think when you get to, I'm post 40 now, so when you get to this age, I think you've pretty much got the people in your life that are going to be sticking around, or mostly have. So it's not something you should feel guilty about, and it's not something you're going to do all the time. But if you don't do it, you're not allowing yourself to welcome amazing new things in.
Okay, so basically take your advice then and don't be this latter person. But something we ask everyone from a brain's perspective, we ask everyone the same question, so you can take a minute to think about it. But
Okay.
it's just, what mindset do you credit most for the success you have today?
That actually is a relatively easy question for me to answer. And it is, my mindset is, and it sounds harsh, but never be average, and I despise mediocrity. If you're capable of more, do more. And my dad taught me this. He was someone who did shape my educational and academic progress in my life. And look, no one is going to blame you if you genuinely are a moron, right, in life. No one's going to blame you for that. That's what he said. I know it's a weird thing to say, but if you've got the capacity to be more and to go further and to just be more than just average, then do it. Because then really it's you that you're selling out if you don't. So the mindset that has always driven me forward is I don't want to just be everybody else. That's not what I want. I want to be different to everybody else. I want to stand out. I don't want to melt into a crowd. I don't want to be beige. I don't want to ever be referred to as nice. That's not for me. I'm happy having, 50% of people love me and 50% of people hate me. You've got to provoke a reaction, I think, in a good or a bad way, but never just be, you know, someone that people forget.
At what moment did this mind shift change, and when did you decide, okay, that's it, enough's enough? I'm gonna be bold. I'm not gonna be lying on the end day. Like, why didn't I just try it? What switched?
I think it switched for me probably in my early 20s because I'd spent a lot of my time during my adolescence being very much a wallflower. And because I hadn't come out or dealt with my sexuality at that point either. So I think also I hadn't fully formed as a person, and even in your 20s you're still forming and still growing, and even now you're still growing. But I think the definitive click was my 20s, and that's not to say that I put boundaries down in my 20s or even in my 30s, because I probably didn't even put boundaries down as much as I should have done even in my early 30s. But from there on in, at the moment you start progressing in your career and getting good development and good mentoring, you start to realize, right, okay, that's what I'm prepared to accept now. And that's the level and that's the standard I'm prepared to accept.
Thank you so much. This has been
Thank you for your
incredible.
time.
There's
It's
lots
been
of
amazing.
really, really great stuff there, especially about like the adult friendships, the being bold. I'm hearing that a lot from a lot of people that I'm speaking to. Like, just
I'll throw caution to the wind, see what happens.
it's just go and see what happens. It's the thing of I don't want to regret it at the end.
We're only here about 80 something years, so what's the point of having regrets?
Do you know what I mean?